Hey y'all, from Spindle Mountain Mercantile, I am Heather. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Today we're going to jump right into the making, so let's get going with project number 1. A couple of videos ago, I showed you this technique I keep seeing on Facebook. People will go into the thrift store and buy things that match their decor, except they don't really like the colors, and they paint them black with spray paint and then put some gold rub and buff over it. Well, I'm doing that with 3 different bells, but I'm using a different process. The first one is the same way, only I painted it red, and now I'm going to add some rub and buff. This was kind of difficult with this particular little bell because that snowman is made up of a bunch of little pieces of clay, and I had to really mash that brush down in there. If you have to do something like that, make sure you use an old brush you don't worry about getting ruined. Now, don't worry about if I'm ruining one of these bells. They're made in China, and I think they were probably originally from someplace like Dollar Tree, so it's not like I'm ruining an heirloom. I really like how this one turned out. I like that you can see a little bit of the red underneath. If it was something for year-round, I think black would be better, but for Christmas, the red worked, but it took a long time. Anyway, here's how he turned out. On the second bell, I sprayed a hammered metallic rose gold, and then I went over it very lightly with a metallic mirrored gold. This one was easy, but I did smudge it a little. You know what, though? I kind of like where the smudges are, so I made more. I'm telling you right now, this was my favorite. I didn't put anything under the metallic mirrored gold when I sprayed this time, and I thought maybe it would have less dimension, but it didn't. Now that could be maybe because this bell has a little dimension in it, but for whatever reason, this was fast, easy, and I love it. Project number 2. Sometimes viewers are a little concerned that I'm messing up some rare antique. Well, I promise you that's not this. Even if it is a special or rare item, it has some pretty significant chips in it and it's not marked. So I'm cutting a piece of styrofoam to fit, and I realized I needed to just shave kind of the edges, and I'm gluing it in. You're going to see me use this horrible glue gun throughout today's video. Oh my goodness, I couldn't find my glue gun when I moved to my new space, and this thing is horrible. You guys are going to hurt for me sometimes watching me push the end. I wanted to find something different to use instead of moss or pine needles in the bottom of this display. So I used these foam roses I got at the thrift store. You can find them on Amazon pretty easy for a cheap price. I'm also going to add Lover of Flowers transfer from IOD. I sell IOD, but I don't do shipping. In the description, I will leave a link for my friend Heather. She gives me a small compensation if you buy anything from her by using my link to get there, but she won't raise your price. So to do something on such an awkward surface that's not smooth and flat, you want to start in the center. And once I got the center in place, I cut all around it. And now I used to call these darts, but one of y'all corrected me and told me the right word. Darts are when you sew pieces of fabric together to make a slant. I can't remember what this is called. So y'all tell me in the comments and I'll try to remember to use that word next time. I cut it all around in different places so that it will lay easier on this surface. Right here I'm working on the words, and they were having a hard time coming off. It was the only part that did, and I'm wondering if that's just because I didn't get that part of the thing cleaned very well. I did run it through the dishwasher, so, you know, live and learn. After I do the center, I'm working my way out over the edges, and every once in a while I'll lift up the carrier sheet and make sure that everything is sticking. If it's not, just lay it back down and rub again, and it should work. You might have to do it a couple of times, maybe even 3. And if it doesn't stick, it probably is dirty or wet. When I got to the top edges, I decided to use an X-Acto knife to really cut around the shape of the outside of this little vase. I did leave a tiny space so I could kind of curve the flowers over the top of it. And that big chunk of IOD at the top, that transfer where it's coming off right there, I saved that and I used it on the sides. I'll show you that in just a minute. Once I did one side, I worked on the other side and did the same thing with the X-Acto knife over here. That's where I did the leftover piece. I'll show you again from the beginning because that wasn't really in the shot. This is, so I switched the leftover pieces. They went up. I took the side from the right and I turned it upside down and put it on the left. And then I did the opposite with the other side. I hope that makes sense. To decorate the top, I put quite a bit of glue on top of the roses around where they met so that the tree stem from this bottle brush tree can go down into the styrofoam that's underneath the floral, but it can be secured by being glued to those roses. If you guys don't buy from auctions online, let me give you a big pointer for when you start, and you really should start. It's awesome. A lot of times people won't make a bid. So if you bid the minimum bid, which is usually $1, you can often win that item. And a lot of times it will be like a box of stuff. They call it a lot. And that lot could have stuff you have no idea. And this is from a lot like that. I got, I think, a dozen of these birds in a lot I bought for $1. And that was only one thing in the box. These birds have little wires underneath them, and I stuck those right down between the floral, and I also attached them with some glue on top of the flowers. I added a couple of more bottle brush trees, and this project was done. Project number 3. How cute is this big old snowflake cafe mug? I guess it's not as cute as I thought because it didn't sell last year for $3. So we're gonna zhuzh it up and add a little bit of fun. I put a good chunk of floral foam in the middle, and then I took some of my leftover pieces and just squeezed it around. I did put a little bit of glue inside the mug before I started this process. Now I'm adding a flat piece to the top. I'm putting an ornament in there that also didn't sell last year, but it didn't quite stick with my glue gun. done, so I added some Type Bond Quick and Thick underneath it. It's made of rosin, I think, and it's got like one of those wires in it that makes it a wobbly thing. It's not like a wobble head, but it's a wobble body. It's a wobble body cowboy snowman. And I thought he would own this cafe, right? I pushed him up against a tree that I cut out a little bit so that he could fit in there. If I didn't do that, he was kind of leaning forward because, you know, he has that spring in there. I try not to use too much of this moss because I get some complaints about it, but I thought it was perfect for this because he is a cowboy and it's a Western theme. I am using some twine that I made from this leftover burlap ribbon. I love to use that kind of twine. It's not perfect. So like some parts will be thin and some parts will be neat and tidy and some parts will be fat and messy. It's really fun to work with. I just took a few strands and pulled them together, and then I tied them into some little jingle bells. I cut the ends off at different lengths, and then I twisted them into my fingers backwards so that they would fray and just be real poofy. I did 3 of these, 2 red and 1 big gold one, and then I attached them to the snowman, and since he's so wobbly, I made sure to attach it down lower to his leg right there so that it wouldn't pull the top over. And then he was done. Project number 4. I found these wooden mushrooms on Amazon. You might be able to find them at Hobby Lobby or someplace. Let me know if you do, because I'd like to know if I can find a better price. Meanwhile, I will leave you a link to these in the description. Anything you buy from Amazon by using my link to get there, they'll give me a small compensation, but won't change your price. When you go there, make sure to look at all of the different mushrooms and all the different sizes and shapes, and make sure you get exactly what you want. I already painted some of these because I did them in trios last year, and this is just what's left over. I am going to go ahead and paint the stems with Debbie's DIY liquid patina in dark and decrepit. You can also get this from my friend Heather over at Create Your Own Cozy. Use my link to get there and she'll, give me a little thank you. I just brushed some of this on the stems and then I wiped it off. I didn't let it sit that long. Just wanted to give it a little bit of a more natural dark color. So I was not careful with brush strokes or making it even. On the tops, I used Cottage Colors mostly by Jamie Ray Vintage in conjunction with Debbie's DIY. And I used Haint Blue and Americana. The other one, I don't know what color it is. I painted it with something last year before I started selling Debbie's DIY. For the red ones, I used Carnival Red from Debbie's DIY, and it's a clay-based paint, so it had to be sealed. I just went ahead and sealed all of these, but a good pro tip is if you use Cottage Colors, you don't have to seal them. It's a 3-in-1, so it's the primer, the paint, and the sealer all in one. The key to that paint is to mix it really well, and for that, I found 2 different good mixers on Amazon. I'll leave a link for those. I prefer my Submersible blender, but there's also this really cool rechargeable milk frother, and it works but only in the smaller jars. You want to have something a little bit more powerful for the bigger jars. I'm using White Swan to make the dots on top of the mushrooms, and so it won't be quite so bright. I'm adding a quick coat of liquid patina dark and decrepit to the top of that and then wiping it off real quick. Also, on the lighter colored blue mushrooms, I went ahead and made kind of just little messy brush strokes going down from the top of the mushrooms onto the stem just to give it a little more natural look. I didn't do that on any of the red ones, but I thought it looked good with the blue. The eye hooks I used on these were way too big. I recommend you get some at like a craft store instead of a hardware store. I have also added a link for a really good mix of different colors and sizes I found on Amazon. These start off really tiny, like the little jewelry ones, and those are great for these mushrooms because they don't weigh very much, and some of them are really small. I did not have to drill a hole for these. I just used my, what are they called? Those locking pliers? A monkey, no, not a monkey wrench. What are those called? Hang on, I'm gonna ask my sweet husband. Vice grips! I swear he's better than Google. I put the little eye screws right in the top of each of the mushrooms, and then I used that same twine I used in an earlier project that I made from burlap ribbon. And I put 3 of these together. These sold great last year. I sold out of them, and I believe I sold them 3 for $5. How cute are they? Project number 6. Last year I bought plain little nutcrackers from Hobby Lobby on clearance, and I tried wet distressing them by painting them black and then putting some Debbie's DIY, some blue color over the top, and y'all, I wasn't real happy with them, so I put them away. So this year I decided to try putting rub and buff on them in different amounts. The first one, I did all of him. That was a lot of brushing. I do not recommend using your fingers for that. Use a little brush so you can get all the little nooks and crannies. And that first one, I had just painted it blue. I hadn't distressed it. This one I distressed just a little bit. You can see some of the black. And I put, you know what? Some of the parts I did a decent amount of gold with the rub and buff, and others I just kind of put a medium size amount, medium to small. Now the third one, I did not put new rub and buff on the brush each time. I put the brush on this really distressed Nutcracker, and I decided I would sell all 3 of these together. I think I'm going to ask $7. They turned out really cute. You could also do them all the same. You could distress them afterwards. There's so many different things you can do with these, but people are loving the gold, and I like to make money and eat, so we're going with the gold. Tell me what you think of these. It was super easy, of course, because I painted them last year and lost them. But anyway, I like them. Project number 7. Because it's beautiful and it sells so well, we are sticking with the all that glitters is gold theme for this project. I started by adding a little rub and buff to this white tree I found at Dollar Tree, and for that I'm just applying it with a small smooshy paintbrush. I'm adding some snow into a little like perfume jar I also found at Dollar Tree. It has gold on it. It's kind of iridescent, but real cute. And I'm going to add the tree to the top by adding a bunch of glue all the way around. And this is another glue gun I thought was better. It's not. On with the bow. I'm using wired ribbon to make this bow. What you do is you start with a tail and figure out how big you want your bows to be, the biggest. And then you make one loop, squeeze it between your finger and thumb, and go on the other side and make another loop. This ribbon is not single-sided, so you don't have to twist it in between. It makes it a little easier than the others. I did this 4 times on each side, and when I got back to the middle, on the 5th time for each side, so I guess that's technically 9, I made one loop with that bow, and now the tail comes out the opposite side of where we started with. If you missed any, that's okay. In the next project, I'm going to take a little bit longer to make a bow. It's so easy with wired ribbon. You can make them so pretty. I took another piece of the same ribbon and tied it through that loop and tied it really tight so it would have a very small area where it's gathered, and it won't be bulky that way. I wrapped that around the little vase and pulled it back around the front, and I tied it in, I believe I just tied a regular shoelace tie, not like a double knot or anything, because it's not going to come undone. If you're not sure of that with your ribbon, go ahead and tie a square knot, left over right, right over left. Right here, I'm using a paintbrush handle to loosen that middle loop because I just made it a little too small. Next, I poofed up the whole bow and I cut duck feet on the tails. I know it's called dovetail, but I just think it's fun to say duck feet, so I do. Usually I like the ends of my tails to hang down, but I adore how these kind of go up, don't you? Project number 8. Last year after Christmas, I bought some little gold trees on clearance. I think I got them at Dollar General, and I'm adding some bulbs that are all the same color. So it's going to be monochromatic, except for the fantastic bow, which will be the centerpiece. I'm taking a little bit longer to describe how to make the bow, so you can skip forward if you already know how to do that. You start by figuring out how long you want the tail to be, and you pinch the top of that between your finger and your thumb. Then you pull it around to make the first loop, and you pinch it again between your finger and your thumb, and you have to twist it. After every move, you twist it so that the pretty side is on the outside. Then you go to the other side and you make the same size bow. I like to lift up the middle of each bow together like I'm doing right here to make sure they're the same size. Then I go back to the center, twist it again, and you start doing it again. But this time, make the next loops a little bit smaller than the first 2 loops. So you just gather it again, twist it as you put it between your finger and your thumb, and then make the next loop and pull those 2 loops together to make sure they're the same size. You're going to do one more section. You can do as many as you want, but I thought this was such ginormous fabric. 3 looked really good, 3 on either side, but 4 is a good number too. So I'm adding the last 2 right here, and to hide the big bulky extra part in the middle, all you do is after you pinch here after the last bow, make 1 loop, and when it comes around, that tail from it will stick out the opposite direction as the tail you started with. If it doesn't, it means you have 1 too many loops. Then I'm going to cut it, and I will put the duck feet in it later on, and I'm just tying it with some of that little wired, I don't know what, it's like foil wrapping paper, frou-frou, yeah, that's what it is. And I'm tying it in 2 double knots, so it's kind of a triple square knot, left over right, right over left, left over right, right over left, however you want to do it. Just make it tight so it doesn't pop out, because that's a big old bunch of fabric there. I didn't film wrapping some more ribbon around the base, but all I did was glue it around, and then I glued the bow to that fabric, and I just floofed it up. And then I took a vintage ornament and took off all the wire part, and I put it right over the top of the tree and glued it instead of using a star. I am not fond of monochromatic stuff, but I love this tree. In the comments, let me know what you think about it. Project number 9. Mama and I worked on this next one together. We started with a little, we don't know what it is, so we're calling it a sauce dish, because not really gravy boat, we're not sure. So we started by cutting some styrofoam to fit, and it didn't have to go over the whole thing because we're not putting floral down into it all the way around. We're just putting it mostly, well, you'll see. We had this little bird from Dollar Tree that had a clip on it. We took the clip off, and then we glued his tail feathers up on his back. Mom is doing that on the left. And then on the right, I'm working with some more of those little foam roses that I found at, where did I get those? Oh, I got them at a thrift store, but you can get these on Amazon pretty cheap. I'm putting them all around the entire bowl except for right here. On this part, all I did was cut off some of the petals, and I glued that down just enough to go over the edge. We're gonna put the tree right there, and we wanted to make sure it really stuck. So we added lots of glue to the top of the floral, and then we just kind of held it down for a little bit. And we pushed the bird so that his tail went right up against the tree. And really, it doesn't even look like his tail. It looks more like some of the rest of the greenery. Like, it's not really greenery, it's goldery. The goldery we put around the edges. These are more flowers that I got at the thrift store. It was so cool. It's in the same parking lot as Joann Fabrics. So when Joann went out of business, they donated all of these, and I got huge moving size boxes for $5 each. So many flowers, y'all. It was awesome. We just added some different gold all around, and we added some pink and white floral to it, and that's all. You guys, this is so precious. I love how this turned out. I would love to have this in my house. Project number 10. I found this at Goodwill, and it didn't have a lid. I think that's why it was probably only 89 cents. I'm not going to glue the styrofoam into it just in case a collector wants it, though. Even if they don't have the lid, they might want it without the stuff in it. So that's okay. But I'm going to make it super cute. So I started by cutting a piece of floral foam, and I just get that at Dollar Tree. And I'm adding some of this tiny little miniature garland. We found ours at Dollar Tree, but look at what I found on Amazon for like an amazing deal for, I think it's 30 feet. I can't remember. I'll leave a link for that. And I just folded the little pieces that we found at Dollar Tree. I think you get a dozen in a package, and they're about maybe 10 inches long. So it took 2 of those, and I just folded them back and forth to cover the styrofoam. And then I glued that garland to the foam. I tried, you see the white stuff? Yeah, I tried putting some Debbie's DIY frosting with white swan in there and making snow, and it just didn't work. So this is good. You have to have some over styrofoam or it's just ugly, and nobody wants that. I'm putting copious amounts in this area here because this is where my tallest tree goes. And I'm putting tons of stuff in this. If you guys don't like more, if you think less is more, skip ahead. You don't want to watch this because I believe more is more. And I love more, especially in this. Now, when you're doing more, you want to start with the biggest items first and place those. Now, the little people that I'm using in this, they're actually little elves, and they're holding a piece of paper like a scroll. And I thought that would be the naughty and nice list. So I believe I got those at Dollar Tree, and they're just from those little miniature towns that they have with all the little buildings. And I spray painted them white, or I don't know what I did. I did something with them last year and never finished it. So I put some gold rub and buff over them for this. And this is some of that wire ribbon foil stuff that you put on gift packages. It's the only thing I could find with a small enough star, and it actually has several. I used the end of a paintbrush to make holes where I was putting some of the floral down in there so it would really stick. and then I also glued everything. So I added some gold twiggy little thingies in the back, and to keep them pushed up against the tree, I decided to add a gold leaf, and I just put some glue down between the tree and the gold leaf and made it stand up straight. I put my little fellas in the front, and that's all I did. Now we have Santa's naughty and nice list. Which one are you on? Not only did Mama and I have a wonderful time making everything this week, we also took some time to make some fun pictures for our thumbnails. We hope y'all enjoy them. Here's a little sampling. We're trying to make 2 videos a week. We might end up doing 3 every 2 weeks, but in any case, we're not really schedule girls. So make sure you subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell so you won't be surprised and miss one. Until you see us again next time, we hope you have a wonderful week. And as always, we hope you are blessed. Bye.